right now, you might be sitting perfectly still. I mean, maybe you're commuting or, maybe you finally sat down at the end of a really long day.
Yeah.
And physically, you're stationary. But internally,
Yeah.
you are just completely exhausted.
Right, because your mind is burning energy as if you were running from a predator.
Exactly. You're replaying a frustrating conversation from this morning or agonizing over an email you have to send tomorrow. You're just quietly struggling with this relentless, invisible storm of restlessness.
And that right there is the core experience of the modern mind. We are just constantly busy.
So busy. Our attention is scattered in like a dozen different directions before breakfast.
Yeah, totally.
So today our mission on this deep dive is to explore some really profound teachings on what is actually happening when your mind feels that chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to look at how true mindfulness isn't just about passive relaxation. It's not kicking back and zoning out on a couch.
Right, it's not a spa day.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually an active, powerful, and deliberate settling of both the body and the mind.
It really is. And we're not just having some abstract philosophical debate about inner peace today.
No, not at all.
This is an urgent, practical teaching on how to find real, unshakable steadiness in your daily life.
All right.
Because, well, if you want to find any sort of clarity, it cannot start with simply wishing for quiet.
Right.
It has to start with understanding the exact mechanics of your own distraction. We have to look under the hood of our own restlessness.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can actively settle the mind, we have to understand the specific sequence of how it gets so chaotic in the first place.
Yeah.
And the teachings point out that the mind naturally experiences a continuous flow of stray thoughts, which, I mean, that's just the nature of the mind, right? It produces thoughts.
It does. But when the mind is restless, it becomes incredibly vulnerable. It gets powerfully drawn outward toward external things and conditions.
Like what we see, what we hear.
Exactly, what we experience in our day-to-day lives. And that outward movement is where the danger lies, because it triggers a very specific, almost inevitable chain reaction. When those stray thoughts are pulled outward toward external things, especially things we find agreeable or pleasant, they produce desire.
Meaning we start wanting things to be a certain way.
Right. We want to grasp onto a pleasant experience and make it permanent. Or we want a difficult situation to suddenly bend to our will.
But I want to pause on the mechanics of that, because simply wanting something doesn't necessarily sound like a storm. How does that desire actually turn into chaos?
Well, it turns into chaos because desire creates a rigid expectation of reality.
Oh, I see.
You build a picture in your mind of how the world should be. But as we all know, the world is constantly changing. It rarely bends to our will.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So inevitably, that desire goes unmet. And when reality blocks your desire, it creates friction. That unmet desire inevitably produces anger or aversion.
So you become frustrated or irritated.
Exactly. You actively push back against whatever is standing in the way of what you want. You're fundamentally rejecting reality.
And that rejection is the anger.
Precisely. And from that anger, confusion arises. Think of it experientially. When you're angry or deeply frustrated, your mind becomes incredibly agitated.
Like you can't think straight.
Right. It's like kicking up the mud at the bottom of a clear pond. The water becomes entirely clouded. And as this confusion deepens, your inner clarity fades.
Wow.
Wisdom is lost because you can no longer see the situation clearly. And the ultimate, final result of that entire chain reaction is suffering.
So it goes stray thought to desire to anger to confusion to suffering.
That's the exact sequence.
I hear that sequence and it makes logical sense, but I have to push back a little here.
Sure.
It sounds almost inevitable. I mean, if you and I are constantly bombarded by the outside world, our jobs, our responsibilities, the endless demands on our time, aren't we just like a boat being swept away by a violent storm?
It feels that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How can anyone be expected to stay steady when the wind is just that overwhelmingly strong?
What's fascinating here is that a fluctuating, scattered mind is exactly like that boat. It's the perfect analogy. When your senses are agitated by everything around you, the mind completely destabilizes. It pitches back and forth, entirely at the mercy of the waves.
Right.
But the profound teaching here reveals a crucial shift in perspective. The storm that destroys you isn't just outside.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The storm that actually sinks the boat is that internal chain reaction we just talked about, the desire and the anger. The wind and the waves might be the external conditions of your life, but the leak in the boat is your own craving and aversion.
Wow. So the external world is just weather.
Yeah,
It is our internal reaction that actually pulls us under and sinks the ship.
exactly.
Since we are constantly getting hit by these storms of distraction, we really need to examine our default reaction to them. Because our usual way of handling the weather often just makes the leak so much worse.
It does. Let's look at a classic analogy that perfectly illustrates our default reactive nature.
Let's hear it.
Imagine an ungrounded person, someone whose mind is entirely caught up in that outward pull. When they're hit by a distraction, an insult, or an irritating thought, they react exactly like a dog chasing a thrown stone.
A dog chasing a stone.
Yeah. If you throw a stone, the dog immediately runs after it. It pounces on it. It bites the stone itself, literally breaking its own teeth in the process.
Oh.
And if you throw another stone, the dog drops the first one and frantically chases the next. Most people spend their entire lives living this way,
Just chasing stones.
chasing every stray thought, every sudden desire, every minor irritation that life throws at them. They are exhausting themselves biting stones.
Here's where it gets really interesting, especially when you think about how this shows up for you in daily life. Like when you get a frustrating, aggressive email from a coworker, chasing the stone is spending 3 hours composing a furious reply in your head while you're trying to make dinner with your family.
Exactly. You are biting the stone.
You're biting the stone. But wait, let me play devil's advocate. In a corporate environment, or just in life, if my boss throws a quote-unquote stone at me in the form of a massive urgent deadline, I kind of have to chase it, don't I?
Right. You can't just ignore it.
Yeah, I can't just sit there and ignore the work.
That is a brilliant distinction to make, and it brings us to the second half of the analogy. True mindfulness is like a lion.
A lion.
Yeah. If you throw a stone at a lion, the lion does not look at the stone. The lion looks at the hand that threw it.
Oh, wow.
When we talk about not chasing the stone, we're not saying you ignore the practical realities of your life or skip your deadlines. We are talking about your internal state.
Right.
Chasing the stone is the emotional reactivity, the hours of internal resentment, the craving for praise, the anger at the timeline. Doing the task with a clear, settled mind is not chasing the stone. The lion looks at the root of the agitation.
So instead of fighting with the imaginary coworker in your head and getting exhausted, being the lion means stopping and looking at why your mind is so attached to needing that person's approval in the first place.
Exactly. When you act like the dog, you're trapped in 3 very specific mindsets. Desire, which is our craving, aversion, which is our anger, and delusion, which is our confusion.
The chain reaction again.
Right. To be the lion is to stop that frantic outward pursuit. It's the deliberate choice to turn around, look inward, and return to the root. You stop chasing the external trigger, and you examine your internal reaction.
But naturally, if we suddenly realize we've been running around exhausting ourselves chasing stones all day, our very first instinct is usually to try and escape the stones altogether.
Oh, of course.
We think, I just need to get away. I need to run away to a quiet place, maybe a cabin in the woods, where absolutely no one is throwing stones at me.
Right.
But the teachings show that this is a fundamental illusion, isn't it?
It is perhaps the most common illusion we face, and it stems from a deep misunderstanding of where the noise is actually coming from.
Okay.
We operate under these deep distortions. We're constantly seeking permanence in a world that is always changing. We seek worldly pleasure, we fiercely protect our ego, and we constantly search for pure, undisturbed environments.
We want the perfect quiet room.
Exactly. And because we so desperately seek this purity or quiet, we mistakenly believe that our restlessness is caused by our location.
We blame the room, we blame the city, we blame the open plan office.
You blame everything outside of us. There is a really powerful teaching about a monk who lived in the Zanyan Mountains.
Tell me about him.
Well, he wanted absolute peace, so he went deep into the mountains, far away from society, and built himself a small, isolated hut.
Sounds nice.
Right. But after a while, he found he couldn't stay there because it was simply too quiet. The silence was deafening. It made him anxious and uncomfortable.
Oh, wow.
So he packed up his things and moved down into a monastery to be around other people.
Makes sense.
But soon enough, he found the people in the monastery were too noisy, too demanding, and too irritating.
Let me guess, he left again.
He left again. He spent his entire life building new huts, moving from place to place, never staying anywhere longer than a year.
That's exhausting.
It is. He never realized that his profound fear of noise was completely identical to his fear of silence. The conflict wasn't in the mountains, and it wasn't in the monastery.
It was entirely internal.
Entirely.
That is so deeply relatable. I mean, think about how often you say to yourself, if I just go on vacation or if I just get a new job, I will finally feel peaceful.
All the time.
But the reality is, you just pack your restless mind right into your suitcase and take it to the beach with you.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to swim, changing pools is not going to save you from drowning. If you don't know how to drive, buying a new car won't help you get to your destination. The barrier is always within.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, true mindfulness protects you, whether you are sitting in a perfectly quiet forest or walking through a loud, chaotic, crowded city.
Right.
The practice is not about finding an external escape. The practice is to settle the mind right where you are. If you are standing, you settle the mind standing. If you are sitting, you settle it sitting.
You don't wait for the environment to become perfect before you decide to find your steady ground.
Exactly.
Okay, so if we can't just run away to a quiet pool, how do we actually do this? How do we actively practice this inner settling right in the middle of our noisy, unpredictable lives?
This brings us to the actual architecture of active settling. Mindfulness is not a fleeting state of relaxation you try to achieve for 10 minutes a day while listening to calming music.
Right, it's not a temporary escape.
No, it's an active settling that is maintained at all times. And the teachings structure this in three vital, interconnected parts: careful behavior, deep concentration, and clear wisdom.
Let's break those down because I think it's easy to gloss over that first one. Careful behavior. What does that actually mean in the context of settling the mind?
Careful behavior is the absolute foundation. It's about your actions in the world, ethical conduct, not causing harm, not engaging in deceit, and not constantly stirring up unnecessary conflict.
Oh, I see.
Think about it practically. If you are constantly lying or gossiping or treating people poorly, your life is going to be filled with drama.
Yeah, you're creating your own storms.
That's exactly. Your mind will be in a perpetual state of defense, paranoia, and agitation. You cannot possibly expect to sit down and find deep inner peace if your daily actions are constantly creating external chaos. Careful behavior builds the stable, secure floor that your mind stands on.
So if we go back to the boat analogy, failing to practice careful behavior is basically drilling holes in your own boat and then wondering why you're sinking.
That's a great way to put it. Careful behavior patches the obvious holes, and once that foundation is set, you can move to the second part, which is deep concentration.
Okay.
There's a beautiful analogy for this. A mind without concentration is like a candle lit outdoors in the wind.
Oh, I like that. When a candle is outside in the wind, the flame flickers wildly. And because the light is moving so frantically, everything you see around you is blurry, chaotic, and distorted.
Yes. The wind represents the external conditions of the world, the noise, the demands, the distractions. Because your source of light is unstable, you cannot see reality clearly.
Right.
Concentration is the deliberate act of bringing that candle indoors. You protect it from the wind. The flame stabilizes, it burns brightly and evenly, and suddenly you can clearly see the reality of the room exactly as it is.
Your mind is no longer jumping from thought to thought. You've stopped the immediate storm.
But even when you bring the candle indoors, even when you have that deep concentration and the mind feels calm, there is still a hidden danger.
And this is where the third part comes in. Clear wisdom.
Yes. This raises an important question. Why isn't continuation enough? You might have brought the candle indoors. You might be perfectly calm, sitting quietly in your room. But imagine that inside your house, you have hidden poison or hidden weapons tucked away in the corners and under the floorboards.
Oh, wow.
You might be sitting there feeling completely at peace, but because those hidden weapons are still in the house, you are profoundly vulnerable.
And what do those weapons represent?
They represent our deep-seated ego, our selfishness, our rigid desires, and our desperate need to always be right.
Oof.
If those are still hiding in your mind, the very moment someone walks into your peaceful room and insults you or challenges your ego, you'll instinctively reach for that hidden weapon. Your peace will instantly vanish, and you will cause harm to yourself or others.
So what does this all mean for the listener? It sounds like concentration is the tool that stops the immediate storm. It gets the candle out of the wind so you can see.
Exactly.
But wisdom is what actually dismantles the ego so the storm cannot easily start again from the inside. Wisdom is the active process of walking through the house, finding the poison, finding the weapons, and throwing them out.
Exactly. Wisdom is the profound realization that there is no need to defend the ego because the ego itself is an illusion.
Wow.
When you actively remove those hidden poisons, the external triggers lose their power over you. And this leads to the ultimate result of the teaching.
Which is?
When you achieve this state, When the behavior is careful, the mind is concentrated, and the hidden weapons of wisdom are removed, you become like an outgoing horse.
An outgoing horse.
Yes, an outgoing horse is a prized, noble animal that moves smoothly, swiftly, and directly toward its goal.
Okay.
It doesn't get distracted by every sound, it doesn't fight its rider, it doesn't buck or rear up, it just does the work with grace and power.
Unlike a stubborn horse.
Exactly. A stubborn horse has no clear direction. It refuses to move, it kicks, it bites, it demands a perfectly comfortable stall, it wants extra grain, and it complains about every single step of the journey.
That sounds like a restless mind.
It is. A mind burdened by ego, hidden weapons, and restlessness is the stubborn horse, always demanding comfort, always fighting reality, always biting the stone. A mindful, settled mind is the outgoing horse moving through life's challenges with purpose, clarity, and steadiness, completely unbothered by the minor inconveniences along the way.
Stabilizing the mind is truly about protecting our inherent wisdom from being lost to all the daily agitation we face. When we practice this active settling through behavior, concentration, and wisdom, we aren't just taking a temporary break from the world, we're building an internal fortress.
We are. When that restless outward movement of the mind finally quiets down, an incredible shift happens. The sufferings that are constantly associated with our confusion naturally begin to fade away.
Yeah.
It's not that the world stops being chaotic. Deadlines will still loom, people will still be difficult, and the wind will still blow.
But the weather's still there.
But you gain the ability to remain undisturbed by whatever you see, hear, or experience. Your clarity becomes your absolute protection.
It is a complete shift from a scattered, reactive state to a deeply protected, mindful state. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final reflection to carry into your day. We have spent this entire time talking about looking inward, clearing the hidden poisons from your own mind, and stopping yourself from chasing stones.
Yeah.
But consider this. Tomorrow, you are going to walk out into a world filled with people who have absolutely no idea that their own houses are full of hidden weapons.
Wow, yeah.
You are going to interact with colleagues, friends, and strangers who are operating as stubborn horses, completely at the mercy of their own internal storms. When they lash out or when they throw a stone at you, they aren't actually reacting to you.
Right, they're reacting to themselves.
They are just fighting their own unmet desires and aversions. If you truly understand that, how does it change the way you react to them? Does it bring you frustration, or does it finally bring you compassion? Think about that the next time the wind starts to blow.